Today's story contains some sensitive content. Please consider carefully before proceeding. Now, let's begin the story. Grace is an independent, strong, and confident woman. She lives a busy life working at a large bank where every day presents a new challenge. Despite her success in her career, Grace feels like something important is missing from her personal life. The fleeting relationships she's had, lacking depth, have made her grow increasingly distant from the feeling of true love. She tells herself that perhaps she hasn't met the right person, or maybe she simply can't find anyone who could change her life. Chloe, James's wife, is a gentle and quiet woman, but there is a sadness in her eyes that only she understands. They have been married for 5 years, and while their relationship is stable in material terms, it lacks romance and deep emotional connection. James, her loving husband, is not a bad person, but over time, Chloe realizes that she no longer finds joy in the ordinary moments of their marriage. Each passing day feels like a repeat of the last, devoid of newness or special emotions. One evening, at a family gathering, Chloe happens to meet Grace. Their encounter was nothing special at first, but from the very first glance, they both felt an odd connection between them. The initial conversations were about work and everyday topics, but gradually, they shifted to deeper discussions, questions about life that neither had dared to face before. And in that space, an unusual and powerful attraction began to form between them. After their first meeting, Grace and Chloe continued to stay in touch through daily conversations. At first, the exchanges were just casual messages, sometimes simple questions about how they were doing, other times sharing updates about work or discussing their favorite movies. But with each conversation, both felt an undeniable, strong connection between them, something that couldn't quite be put into words. Chloe began to find joy in their conversations. The daily stresses of life seemed to ease every time she sent a message to Grace. She felt a sense of comfort and understanding from Grace that she had never experienced in her marriage. Grace, too, began to feel similarly. Although their relationship didn't have any clear labels, she realized she couldn't stop thinking about Chloe. Every message, every phone call made her feel like she had found a part of herself in Chloe. One afternoon, after a busy week, Grace decided to invite Chloe out for a coffee. At first, they only talked about mundane things, but in the cozy ambiance of the cafe, as the light began to fade and the city was engulfed by darkness, an unusual silence settled between them. Chloe looked at Grace, and in her eyes, Grace saw something profound, a feeling that had never been expressed before, a longing that both of them could no longer deny. Chloe placed her hand on the table, close to Grace's. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried a deeper meaning. Grace couldn't take her eyes off Chloe. They both remained silent, but in that moment, everything seemed to stop, and they both felt an odd tension in the air. It was as if they had reached the edge of a significant change, and neither of them could go back to the way things had been before. The relationship between Grace and Chloe was becoming increasingly difficult to define. Their meetings and conversations were no longer just relaxing moments. They had transformed into necessary dialogues, times neither of them wanted to end. The connection between them had surpassed the boundaries of friendship, and Chloe realized she could no longer deny the emotions that were steadily growing within her. One weekend afternoon, after a stressful week at work, Chloe decided to meet Grace. She felt the need to confront the feelings she couldn't explain. It was a gloomy afternoon, with dark clouds gathering in the distance, signaling an impending rainstorm. Chloe entered the cafe where Grace was sitting, the soft yellow light casting a gentle glow on Grace's face, making her appear serene yet distant, almost mysterious. Grace looked up as she heard the door open, her eyes lighting up when she saw Chloe. "Chloe, why did you choose a day like this to come?" Grace smiled gently, but there was a hint of concern in her eyes. She could sense the tension in the air between them, as though everything in that small room was shifting. Chloe sat down across from Grace, looking into her eyes, and in that moment, she couldn't hold back her emotions any longer. "Grace, I think we need to talk about what's happening between us," Chloe began, her voice soft but determined. "I can't stop thinking about you, about how we always have these real conversations, about the moments we share. Everything is becoming too complicated for me." Grace furrowed her brows, listening intently to Chloe. She didn't say anything, just sat still, allowing the silence to settle around the unspoken words. Her heart began to race, but she didn't dare face the truth that was slowly revealing itself. Their relationship, despite how far it had come, had not yet been clearly defined. Grace realized that there was something between them that couldn't ever return to what it was before. "Chloe, I don't know what to say. We have been through so much, but can we stop now?" Grace's voice slowed, not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't want to hurt Chloe. She could see the feelings Chloe had for her, and she couldn't deny that her own feelings for Chloe weren't simple either. Chloe looked at Grace, and in her gaze there was a mixture of determination and pain. She could sense the hesitation in Grace's words. The emotions swirling inside her were complex. "I don't want to stop, Grace. I know this isn't right, but I can't stop feeling this way. I can't lie to myself anymore." Chloe's words hit Grace like a shock. She had never imagined that her feelings would lead to such a turning point. She had a family, a stable life, and she didn't want everything to fall apart because of uncontrollable emotions. But perhaps these feelings were too strong to ignore. Grace took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She looked into Chloe's eyes, and in that moment, everything around them seemed to stop. The intense feelings Grace had been trying to suppress for so long suddenly surged to the surface. "Chloe, I feel the same way, but I don't know what to do with these emotions." "We can't keep running from it, can we?" Chloe said softly, her lips almost curling into a small smile. "I know we can't change the past, but we can change the future." Chloe's words were like a ray of light in the darkness, an opening to possibilities neither of them had ever imagined. Grace felt that she wasn't alone in this fight. The guilt and worry about the future seemed to lift slightly as she realized that Chloe was standing by her side. But still, they didn't know what the next steps would be. The silence between them stretched on for a few minutes, as if both were pondering what decisions lay ahead. The complex emotions that had begun to form now seemed undeniable, and Grace knew that the next steps wouldn't be easy. But deep down, she sensed something certain. Everything had changed. The space between Grace and Chloe became suffocating, as if every breath they took was filled with unspeakable emotions. After Chloe's words echoed in the air, the two of them fell into silence for a moment, but everything was no longer as simple as before. Both of them sensed the tension in the air, like an invisible thread gradually pulling them closer to each other. Grace couldn't help but notice the change in Chloe's eyes. They lit up as if containing a flame that even Chloe herself couldn't explain. And that only made Grace feel more anxious. Although these emotions had been simmering between them for a long time, now they felt like a powerful wave about to crash, uncontrollable. Grace tried to look away, but she couldn't stop herself from staring at Chloe. She didn't want to admit that she felt the same way, especially when Chloe, instead of pulling her hand away after placing her coffee cup down, gently brushed her fingers over Grace's hand, creating a physical contact that left them both uneasy. Chloe noticed Grace's gaze becoming distant. She could feel her heart beating faster as her fingers lightly grazed Grace's smooth skin. A warm sensation spread through her fingertips, but it was also tense. It wasn't the first time they had touched, but this time the touch felt different. It wasn't just a friendly pat or handshake anymore. This sensation was deeper, more complex, as if it was testing the boundary between friendship and love. "Chloe," Grace whispered, her voice trembling lightly. She felt like she was standing at the edge of something she couldn't go back from. "Are you okay?" Chloe looked at Grace, her eyes filled with concern but also with a hint of desire. The closeness and familiarity they had shared all this time now felt like a fire burning slowly, ready to ignite at any moment. Chloe had never imagined that their relationship could go this far, but the times she'd looked into Grace's eyes, the touches, the soft exchanges, had made it impossible for her to suppress her feelings any longer. Grace took a deep breath, and she felt the space around them shrink. In that moment, Chloe's fingers continued to glide lightly over the back of her hand, the the sensation of their skin touching becoming a compelling force they couldn't resist. It was a feeling both unfamiliar and familiar, spreading from Grace's palm up her arm, then settling at her throat, causing her to choke on her words. Now, she couldn't avoid it any longer. She could only face herself, confront the emotions she had never dared to admit. Each time Chloe touched her, even with a simple caress, it felt like awakening a part of Grace's heart that she had tried to bury. "Chloe," Grace repeated, this time with a little more strength in her voice, but still full of uncertainty. She felt like she was standing between two worlds, one of the family she had built over the years, and the other, these new, painful emotions Chloe was bringing into her life. Chloe didn't respond right away, just quietly held Grace's hand tighter, as if trying to convey everything she couldn't say with words. The grip wasn't too firm, but strong enough for Grace to feel the determination and resolve in it. The warmth from Chloe's hand made Grace's heart tighten. It was a connection she had never felt before. Chloe, no longer able to hold herself back, gently pulled Grace closer, bringing their bodies nearer. The soft scent of Grace's perfume filled Chloe's nose, making her even more overwhelmed. A feeling both familiar and strange, as if she was drowning in her own emotions. She could hear the beat of Grace's heart, and it felt like it matched her own. Grace, once again, looked into Chloe's eyes. She recognized something in them, a mutual understanding, a shared connection that she could no longer deny. And then Grace felt a fire ignite within her. It was no longer confusion or fear, but a powerful urge, like a call she could not resist. Chloe, with all her determination, finally moved in closer, placing a soft kiss on Grace's lips. It wasn't a passionate kiss, but a gentle one, full of unspoken meaning, as if confirming the emotions that neither of them had yet put into words. The sensation of their lips meeting made everything around them seem to stop. All the worries, all the doubts seemed to vanish in that moment. Grace couldn't think of what might happen next. She could only feel the comfort in that tender touch. When they pulled apart, both of them looked at each other, their eyes glistening with unshed tears, as if searching for reassurance from the other. A long silence lingered, but neither of them wanted to break it. The tension, fragile yet powerful, still hung in the air, like an invisible thread connecting their hearts. In that moment, both Grace and Chloe realized they couldn't go back to how things were before, but somehow they knew that the next step would be a challenging one. After the unexpected and emotional kiss, both Grace and Chloe sat still, as if caught in a moment they couldn't control. The atmosphere between them remained thick with tension, but now it was enveloped by a layer of more complex emotions, regret mixed with longing. Chloe looked away from Grace, focusing on her hand gripping the coffee cup. "What did we just do?" she whispered, her voice trembling as if questioning herself more than asking Grace. Grace didn't respond immediately. She felt her chest tighten, her heart racing as if trying to escape her body. She had known for a long time that the feelings between them were no longer just friendship, but crossing that boundary still overwhelmed her. "Chloe," she spoke gently but seriously, "are you sure about what you want?" Chloe took a deep breath, trying to keep her composure. She looked up, her eyes meeting Grace's, eyes that had always made her feel safe, but now held a trace of anxiety. "I don't know," Chloe confessed, "but I can't stop feeling like there's something special between us." Chloe's words made Grace feel both warm and pained. She knew that Chloe was struggling with her feelings, just as she was. But the problem was, Chloe still had a marriage, a family she couldn't abandon. Grace didn't want to be the one to break that apart, even though her heart was undeniably drawn to Chloe. "Chloe, do you realize that this could change everything?" Grace asked, trying to control the emotions rising within her. "Have you thought about James? Have you thought about your family?" Chloe nodded, her voice choking. "I know, but I can't control my feelings, Grace. I've tried, but it just makes me feel emptier." Grace looked into Chloe's eyes, seeing the sincerity in her words. If that's the case, we need time, Grace said, keeping her voice steady. Don't make any decisions while your emotions are still in turmoil. You need to think about what really matters to you. Chloe didn't answer, only nodding lightly. A silence stretched between them, but this time it wasn't as tense as before. It was the silence of two people trying to face their emotions, trying to understand what was happening inside their hearts. We can move forward, but not today, Grace said, her voice soft but firm. Let everything settle. If you still want this, you know I'm here. Chloe gave a faint smile, a sad yet grateful one. She stood up and walked out of the cafe, leaving Grace sitting alone, her mind swirling with thoughts. Both of them knew that this relationship had changed forever, and the road ahead would not be easy. But no matter what, they couldn't go back to what they had before.